This is Mike Pratt of Picarzo Pianos, and this video is called How to Arrange a Piano Song from a Fake Book Lead Sheet. And I'm doing this video now because this is a video that I wish I had access to when I was younger and starting to play the piano. I started as an adult in my 20s to learn the piano, and what I wanted to do was play a few of my favorite songs and have them sound decent instead of either way too easy, that sounded kind of unprofessional, or way too hard. And so my options were to find a fake book. And so I found fake books, and they had all my favorite songs in them, but they just had the melody. And so if I just played the melody and then the chord symbols, it didn't sound professional. It didn't sound the way I wanted it. And then I would go find that song in a piano sheet music book, and it would either be too easy for me to play or it would be too difficult for me to play. And so what I realized is that to create a arrangement that works for you, you have to create the arrangement yourself. And it's actually very easy to do. And I'm going to show you that today, how to take a lead sheet, a simple song, doesn't sound professional if you just play it as is, and then turn it into a beginner piece or an intermediate piece or an advanced piece. And then you can sit down and you can learn your own arrangement of the song. And I would suggest that anyone who is excited about this, go out, get a software called MuseScore 3. That's the one I used. It's an open source free software. So get that software, and then we'll start arranging a song. And so we'll take a song like Amazing Grace, which is on the screen right now, and it's in a lead sheet. And it doesn't sound very good as a lead sheet, but if I play it and then I switch quickly to the advanced version, you can hear how we can get through about 8 stages from a simple lead sheet that doesn't sound very good to an advanced version of the piano that sounds amazing to me. So I'll play a little bit now, where we're going to start, where we're going to end up, but then there's about 6-7 stages in between that. So here we go. It's Amazing Grace. This is the lead sheet, and then I'll click over to the advanced version. So I hope that demonstrates how you can start with a lead sheet and you can end up at an advanced piano arrangement, but you can stop anywhere in between, whether you're a beginner or an intermediate or an advanced player, and play the song that you want to play, practice that song, and then you could sound halfway decent at exactly your skill level. So let's get to it. However, before we get started, there is some knowledge that you must have for this to even make sense. You'll have to be able to read notes on bass clef or treble clef. The good news is you don't have to speed read it or sight read it. You can figure it out, and the more you do it, the better, more familiar you'll become. This process will actually help you with reading your sheet music. The second thing is you have to have an understanding of chord symbols. For instance, an F chord. You'll have to know that that composes an F major chord, and that has an F note, an A note, and a C note in it. I would, for now, ignore the chord symbols in the lead sheet that have crazy numbers after the chord. So if you see F add 9 flat 13, just ignore the ninth and the flat 13 for now, and just put the regular chord in there. The caveat is you want the dominant 7th chords in there. So if you're in the key of F major, like we're going to be for Amazing Grace, you'll have to know that the dominant chord is the C7 chord, and that composes of C, E, G, and B flat is the 7th of the C7 chord. Other than that, I think it's pretty easy, and I'll show you exactly how to build it all in MuseScore. Get comfortable with MuseScore. It took me a couple hours to learn how to use it, and we will start the 8-stage method. Thank you. Stage 1, this is the lead sheet stage, and what we want to do as the first step is to recreate the lead sheet electronically in this MuseScore 3 software. And it's pretty easy, but it takes a little bit of time. And I think it has to do it because this is the process you're going to use to start building the arrangements to your level. And anyone who says that you can open a fake book, put it on the piano, sit down and play something professional without having gone through this process, either electronically like this or in your mind, is crazy, right? Because you have to go through these processes, and then as you build the skills, then maybe you can do this in your mind while you're sitting at the piano, but you certainly can't start there. And so the first step is to create a lead sheet. And so we're going to create a lead sheet for Amazing Grace. And so I clicked on the plus button, and I will type in Amazing Grace, and I will type the Picarzo piano method, stage 1, and you don't have to have a subtitle here, and I'll call it the lead sheet. I find it helps me to do this in stages so that I have a record of each level I'm at, so I can go back to any one of them. If you want to put in arranged by, you can put your name because you are going to be the arranger. So you could do that. And then for a lead sheet, we only need the treble clef. And so we'll do next. I'm going to do it in F major because that is the key that's in my head, the song's in my head at. And a lot of lead sheets will choose the key for the song based on how good the melody fits within the treble clef staff. So if it fits neatly between the bottom line E and the top line F, then that's what key they'll do. But you can put it in any key that you want. Supposing you want to sing in a different key, you could put it in a different key for yourself. And I will start with, let's say, 16 measures, and the tempo Amazing Grace just sounded good to me at a higher level in 88 beats per minute. So we'll start there. So we'll click finish, and that will create us a lead sheet. And so we just want to take the lead sheet and we want to copy it straight from the fake book, right, into this area. And I don't have to do that because I am doing this from memory. So how I'm gonna do each stage is show you, say, the first 4 measures of how to do that, and then I will cut to having the whole thing done so that we don't have to spend the whole time watching me do this. I downloaded MuseScore like 3 or 4 days ago. I'm still getting used to it, and so I am going to start putting in the notes. I'm going to do this from memory because it's in my mind. So I'm going to put a pickup note, 4th measure. I usually leave 4th measures pretty quiet when I'm arranging. So I'm going to put in C. I'm going to put F major. It's going to go from the 5th to the 1st. And then I'm going to change it up here to an F. Right? And then I am going to do 8th notes, and I'm going to put that there. And then we need another dotted half note for that. And then we need quarter note, G, and then we need another dotted quarter note, and we'll put it to a D, and then the last note I'll do is here, C. So the good thing about MuseScore is that, and I'm going to take it off of this note creation thing so that I can play with it and see what's going on. So I highlight the first note, and I'm just going to play it to see if I got the melody right, if it sounded right to me. So that's the stage of putting in the notes, and you're going to do this for the whole song. It's not too hard. The other thing you want to do for a lead sheet is add a chord symbol. And so you can come up here and add, it's under text, it's a chord symbol, but it's also Control K. So you can do a Control K, which is what I'm going to do. So I highlight the note where I want to put the chord symbol, and I do a Control K, and I'll put an F there. And then I'll highlight this one. This is still an F in my mind. And so I'll do Control K again, and I'll put an F. And then in this one, It's the fourth, B flat major. So I'm going to put in another chord symbol, B flat, and then it goes back to F. So I'm going to add Control K and add an F. So when you do MuseScore and you put in a chord symbol, it actually plays the chords. So let me see if I got the chords right here. Good. It sounds good to me. Now what I don't want when I play this is I don't want to hear the chord played, because we're going to be arranging the chords. Because that's how it sounds when a typical beginner will play it. Block chord on the first beat of the measure, and then block chords only on the first beat, something. So we're going to do our own arrangement. So I'm going to click off this inspector play. So now the chord's not going to play. So I'll click on it. It's going to play when I click the chord, but I'm going to take that off. And so now when I play it, it's just like the lead sheet. This is the melody, and this is how you want to learn the melody when you start to practice. So we're good. I don't think there's anything unusual, so I'm going to step away from the camera for a minute. I'm going to finish building this stage 1 lead sheet, and then we'll take it from there. Here is the lead sheet that I've completed in MuseScore. I have changed this around, edited it. You can actually make this bigger or smaller depending on what you want to do with it. This are the first 4 measures that we did, and I have filled out the rest of the song in what is my mind. So I have a C7 here. You probably could have a C, but I hear a C7 with a flat B flat in it. There are notes that are tied here. If you come over here to lines, there are lines over here that you can use to tie notes together so they don't sound. So this is what it sounds like. You don't hear that sound. So you use ties to tie notes together. And then this chord I originally thought was an F, but then in my mind it was like more of a minor, so I used the 6 minor. So that's good. So in this song we have the 1 chord, we have the 4 chord, we have the 5-7 chord, the dominant 7th chord, and then we have the 6 minor. And then toward the end, we have just a simple melody line going from A to G to F. And so I want a little classical thing where you have an F with a C bass, then the C7 with the C bass, and then the F. So this slash letter symbol means that this first letter is the chord, and then after the slash, this letter is the bass note. And so that will be helpful on the next stage. So that concludes stage 1. So let's just go ahead and play it so you can hear what it sounds like. Good. So not hard. Very simple. This is what you'd see in any lead sheet. And what I'm saying is grab the fake book, the song you want to do, make it a simple song at first, and then just type it in here. So you have a starting point of reference. And so we can move on to the next stage, which is stage 2, which is adding the second clef. So stage 2 is adding the bass clef to this, because we need to start arranging, and we want to arrange a piano part to your level, beginner, intermediate, or advanced. And so we need to take this lead sheet that we did, we want to save as, we want to save a copy as, and we'll call it stage 2. And then we'll open stage 2. So now we've got stage 1 and stage 2, and they're exactly the same. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start building stage 2, which is, we'll call it the bass clef. To arrange something that sounds good for yourself, you need to have the 2 staffs. Now this is a little tricky because it's not intuitive. So we're going to go to Edit, Instruments. And so right now we have piano and we have staff 1 that's a treble. So we're going to add a second staff, and that's a bass clef. So we're going to click that, and now we've got a bass clef. And this is also a very easy step, whereas step 1 was just copying from the lead sheet exactly, note for note, or changing some notes as you like, as you hear them. This is also going to be really easy because all we're going to do is take that chord symbol and we're going to put one bass note, one full note bass note in, and I'll show you. So I'm going to turn my note thing off up here on. I'm going to put whole notes because we're going to do whole notes, and I'm going to put an F in there because there's an F up there. This is also an F. Is a B flat, so we're going to put a B flat in there because the key signature is a flat. That B is going to be a B flat. We'll put an F there. Whoops, that's a G. I'll fix that in a minute. And there's no thinking involved in this. You just put that, you put the notes in there, and it's very interesting. I made a mistake right there, but I'll show you how to correct it in a minute. And then F, and then I'll put a D. And then because I have an F chord with a C bass, I'm going to change that to a half note. And I'm going to put the C in there. And then this is also a C because it's a C7. And then the final note will be I have a rest. I need a rest because I have a quarter note pickup there. So I'll put it there. Now, I made a mistake there. I'm going to take it off note and I'm going to play it. Actually, I'll play it from here so that it really stands out. Actually, I'll play it from the beginning. And I am going to increase the size, and this is a control scrolling wheel. And I should have done this earlier. I apologize. There we go. That's good enough. Now, hopefully that's easier for you to see. So we're gonna start at the beginning. We're gonna play it, and I'm gonna hear the mistake. Whoa, that's a mistake. That sounds terrible. So I'm gonna highlight that note, and I'm gonna move that down to the F to where it should be. And now we have just done this on the fly. It took about 10 seconds to add all the bass notes in there, and this is what it sounds like for stage 2. So stage 2 is complete. We've got two clefs. We have got bass notes in there, and it still doesn't sound professional. Doesn't sound anywhere near professional, but we need to go through stage 2 to get to the later stages. So I'm going to save that, and then we will move on to stage 3. So now on to stage 3. Stage 3 is adding treble harmony to the treble clef. So first we're going to do is we're going to save a copy of this. We'll call it stage 3. And we will then open stage 3. So get out of that. Okay. So I'm going to take my mouse wheel and I'm going to press the control key and kind of so that everybody can see what it is I'm doing here. Okay, good. So now I've got stage 3, we've got stage 1, stage 2, which was adding the bass clef. Now stage 3, I am going to call this stage 3, we'll call it treble harmony, and I'll call it beginner. Because this is kind of the beginner level, right? This is where you're actually adding notes to make it sound a little better. So what we have to do is we've got an F chord here, but we've got an F note and an F note. And so we need to add some more notes in here to make it sound a little fuller, to add some harmony, shall we say. Now we've got the C here, and so I don't want to add too many notes at the beginning because remember this is a beginner who's going to be playing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add maybe one note on the first beat of each measure. And I don't typically like to add too much to the fourth beat, so I'm going to leave those notes alone. So let's go ahead and add a few for the first couple measures, and then I'll cut away and come back. So I've got an F chord, I've got an F and an F. I've got a C here that leads to the F, so I don't want to duplicate that C, but I need an A. So let's go ahead and add an A. We'll put on our note sign. We'll mimic the note that it is, and we'll put it like that. So now we've got, we've got a little harmony. We've got the third in there. Now we've got the third here, and we want to add. Now I just had an F, so now I want to add the C for that. Now I'll go to B flat. Now the three notes in B flat are B flat, D, and F. And so I've got a B flat, I've got an F, so now I want to add the D. And so I want to come down here, and if I scroll down a little bit, I've got the F, I've got the C, so I'm missing an A. And you want the melody on top. I always want the melody on top, so we're not changing anything. So if I get out of note and I start playing from the beginning, you'll hear a little bit, it's going to start sounding a little bit fuller. So we're starting to sound better, and I would think this would be okay for a very beginner, right? So, a three-note chord, nothing too crazy, and so I'll step away, I'll finish this up, and come back and explain a few things. So back at stage 3, where I filled out the sheet with some harmonies in the treble section, I also did something a little different. We have, in the first couple measures, on stage 2, we had F to F, and we had the F bass to the F bass. Now, typically, you want a little bit of motion in there, and so I changed this to an A note so that we go from F to A to B flat, kind of a bass moving line. And so I added that. That was the only change I made to the first 4 measures. And then in the C7, we've got C, E, G, and B flat. C is the bass note, C is the melody, and so you could add the G in there, but that's a little much. So typically you sometimes leave out the 5th of a C7 chord, so I left out the G there. Because it's a little bigger sounding here, I added 2 notes in here. I added the F and the A to lead up to the C melody note, and then back to standard stuff. And here at the end, because I wanted kind of a bigger ending, I added 2 notes here, 2 notes here, and 2 notes here. And so that's all I did to create this, say, beginner sheet music for Amazing Grace. So let's go ahead and play that. Now the only thing that jumped out at me was I have an A here and an A here, so I probably should have moved that up to there, but I didn't, and I'll probably put it back. That sounds a little more fuller. However, I am going to put it back for this stage because that's how I did it. That is stage 3. Stage 4 is very easy. What we're going to do in stage 4 is we're going to add a little motion and fill up a little space, because that's, to me, that's the primary function of arranging. Is there's so much empty space here and here that we want to fill that up, and that's how you get from beginner to late beginner to early intermediate to late intermediate to advanced, is by how much can you fill up in a measure that you can play comfortably. So I'll be back in a second with stage 4. So now we move on to stage 4. Now stage 4 is we want to add a little motion, and that will get us to an easy piano arrangement. And so I'm going to make a copy of this, save a copy, and call it stage 4. And then I'm going to go ahead and open that copy, stage 4. I'm going to use my control and my scroll wheel to make it a little bigger so that y'all can see it. Good. And so now we'll call this stage 4. And the idea is to get to, I'll call this a late beginner. And we'll say it's, we'll call it easy piano, which is what it really is, easy piano. In my mind, anyway. This is all my opinion. And what we're doing is adding quarter note motion. Okay. And so, again, to get from like a beginner to a late beginner, you have to add some motion in here. There's too much space. When I play this first measure, space, too much space. So what's the easiest thing we can do to add some motion in here? And so the easiest thing is in the bass to start adding a couple of notes in the bass to add some motion. And so what we'll do is we'll change that to a quarter note. And then instead of having just an F in the bass for this whole measure, we'll do an F, a C, and an F. So a 1, a 5, and a 1. And so we will come here and we will add a note, and we'll add the C, and then we'll add the F. But we'll add the F as a half note. Okay? So we'll add just a little bit of motion. And so we'll do the same thing on the next one. And we will put, we've got to change this. So I'm going to click on this quarter note here, and I'm going to click on I'm going to take this quarter note. There we go. So I've clicked it on. Now I've got some more notes to play in. And so I will just do the simplest stuff because this is just for a beginner, right? So I will do A, C, and F as well, except I will make that note a half note. And then I will do the B flat. So I will take this note off. I will highlight this note, change it to a quarter note so it gives me some space. And then I will add B flat. The fifth of B flat is an F note. And then I need a half note. So then I want to do another B flat. And so here I want to do the same thing. I want to take this off. I want to make this whole note a quarter note. And then I want to add an F, C, and a half note F. So, what have I done here? All I've done is given it a little motion, add a couple more notes from the F chord in this measure to give it just a little bit of motion. And so let's hear how that sounds for these first 4 measures. So that is kind of the thing you would hear in a beginner, easy piano arrangement that you would buy in a store. So that was simple to arrange. One thing I'm going to do is when I play this, I would, first of all, I'm going to change that to a half note because that's what I heard. I'm going to change that to a half note as well. And so have it ring, but also not only is it going to ring, but I want to have the pedal in there. So I come over here to lines and I do more. And before I click it, I want to highlight that and that and click the pedal. And so the pedal will start here and then release after that note. So let's do that a couple times. and then for each of these first 4 measures, and then I think I will be happy with this easy piano arrangement. So let's listen to that for a second. So I think that sounds pretty good, and so I will fill out the rest of this sheet and be back in a second. So I'm back. I have filled out the easy piano late beginner version of this. A couple things I want to highlight is you'll notice I tried to keep because the melody is on the 4th beat, I tried to keep that free and open here. I don't like, if the melody is on the 4th beat, I don't typically like to have anything in the bass on that. So that's the first thing I wanted to point out. If I scroll down a bit, there was nothing unusual. You typically don't want a small interval in the bass. So you typically want to go from the root to the 5th in the bass, especially when you're lower. I know here I went a 3rd, but I think it sounds okay. So when I put my D minor in, you want to have the low D, you want to have a 5th to the A, and then up to the D again. Here, I did a little something because I didn't have a full measure of one chord, and this frequently happens. And so what I like to do is, if the melody is on 1 and 3, I like to have a little bit of fullness in beats 2 and 4, and these are just the chord. So because I have an F over a C, I want to mirror some of the F chord here, and then have 2 notes here for the 4th beat because there's no melody here, and then that leads into kind of a big F chord. And I want to say, since I'm leading with the E and the G here, it kind of leads to an F, and then I can go down to a C, and then just kind of raise this up an octave for kind of a big finish. So let's play this easy piano thing that we've created, and we'll see how it sounds. Great, so that's stage 4. That's an easy piano stage, and that may be perfect for you. Maybe you're just starting the piano and you want to play Amazing Grace and you want it to sound okay, and you want to impress some people who just learned that you started playing the piano 30 days ago, and you want to play a nice little arrangement of Amazing Grace that's not too hard. You've built it yourself, and you can make this sound even better. It'll sound even better on a piano, on a real acoustic piano. So we are going to take this, and then we're going to move up to, say, an early intermediate stage of arranging. And it will not be too much more than this, but it will be something else to add a little more motion. Remember, it's all about filling in space and adding motion. And so we're going to add a little bit more motion, and that will turn it into kind of an intermediate song. So I'll be back in a second. So this is stage 5. We have done stage 4, which is what I call easy piano. And now we want to move into the intermediate stage of what is an intermediate piano piece. And so I am going to do as I always do. I'm going to save a copy. I'm going to call it stage 5, which I'm going to call kind of early intermediate, because we're only going to make one change. And that will change it from easy piano late beginner to intermediate. So let me control and scroll wheel up so you can all see it. There's probably a way to default it to this size, but I don't know it. Go down 1, and there we go. All right, so we can all see it. So let's call this stage 5 and call it early intermediate. And as you do these things, as you go through these stages, you're going to realize that it doesn't take much to move it up between these stages. And so once you understand what it is, then you'll actually get better at the piano, because you'll notice that I don't have to do too much more to make it sound a whole lot better. And so we're going to start with, our stage 4 things, but we're only going to do, like I said before, we're going to add motion and then fill in space. So we're going to add a little bit more motion. The quarter notes kind of at 88 sounds beginner-ish. So what we're going to do is we're going to change these to eighth notes. And we're gonna add a couple eighth notes, and then it's going to sound, to my ear, early intermediate. So let's go ahead and do that so you can see what I'm talking about. So we're going to change that to that, and we're going to change that to that. So that gives us 4 notes. And so I'm going to add some notes here, and I'm going to add the F. I'm going to add, and I'm just going to keep adding to the chord. I'm going to add notes to the chord. And so I did some mess there, so I got to go clean up my mess. So I'm going to highlight that note. I'm going to delete it. I'm going to change this to a half note. There we go. So I took a roundabout way of getting there, but now I have added 4 notes in there. I've added eighth notes. And eighth notes at this speed will give you quite a bit of motion, and it will sound pretty darn good. And I leave this space here because I want the melody to always ring through. Some people like to hide melodies, some people like to disguise them, put them in the middle. To me, keep it simple, keep the melody in the top, and keep it open so that people can hear the melody. So let's do that for a few more measures so that you can have, and hopefully I can do it without messing it up too much. So I'm going to change that to eighth notes, and I'm going to change that to an eighth note. Right? So that will give me the space. And right now, so the F is the first one. Oh, sorry, the A is the first one. And then my next one will be that. And then I'll take that off, and I'll just move this note up to an F. So I always want to stay within the F chord, and then I'm going to add another eighth note, and that will be the next note in the scale, and then I'll stop that, and I'll move this up to a C. So now I've got the notes still of the F chord. See, all these notes are just part of the F chord. And then these are also part of the F chord, but I'm just starting on the A bass because I'm leading from F to A to B flat. And so let's do the same thing for the B flat. I'm going to make that an eighth note, make that an eighth note, and that will be B. What would I do there? I guess I'll do that. It's going to sound a little funky, but, hey, we're just doing stuff. So these 2 notes in between have to be, if I'm starting on B flat, I like to leave a 5th in there. So I'm going to do B flat, F, B flat, and then D, and then F. Now that overlaps that D a little bit, but I've given myself some space. I've given myself the 3.5 beat to be empty. And so I think it'll sound all right. So let's take it off the note thing, and then we'll do one more measure, and it's the same thing. It's F, and so we're going to take that, change that to an eighth note, change that to an eighth note. We'll move that up to F, and then what we'll do is we'll add notes. I'll add the C, F, I'll add the A there, and then we'll just move that up to the C. And the C is going to be the C there, but there's space there, so that might sound okay. So let's, as a test, let's play it and see how the first 4 measures sound. So good. So that adds the motion that we're looking for. It sounds a lot better than just having quarter notes here. And it adds more motion, and it fills in some of the space in the beginning. And so we'll go with that as the early intermediate. I'll fill in the rest, and I'll be right back. Great. So now I filled in stage 5, so you can see how it all looks and sounds. And I tend to like to go up. I was thinking about that just now. So F, C, F, A, C. That gives me, if you run out of space here, then you can sometimes add notes to the F chord, and you could add, so I'll show you, just as an aside, wouldn't do it for this one. So that, you could actually make this the ninth, right? As long as you end the third on a chord note. So a lot of composers will do this, or arrangers will do this. They'll do the F, C, F, and then they'll add the G as a leading tone to the A. So let's play that and see if it sounds okay. So it sounds a little more interesting, a little more jazzy. So that would be, then you would start saying add 9, and we don't want to do that for what we're doing here today. But just to give you a flavor, if you run out of space, sometimes you can just do the ninth, add the ninth into the bass. As long as it's not on a major beat, it's not on 1, 2, or 3, you can sometimes get away with that. The other thing I wanted to mention is when we, honestly, I think that was it. So that is the only change, really, from getting... Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention was sometimes you can go up and down notes. Like, you don't have to go up. Sometimes you could go up and then down, or you could change these around so that you have a different version of it. So if we did that, it might be a little interesting. So you could do alternating things, but let's just keep it simple for now. We're trying to get to the next level as easy as possible. And the way we got from late beginner to easy piano to early intermediate is just by making eighth notes to fill in some space. So let's listen to the whole thing, and we'll be back. Great, so you see the ending was exactly the same as the stage 4 because it sounds full enough, even though there's no eighth notes in there. And I wouldn't put eighth notes in there because they're kind of block chords, and it's kind of, you want a little bit of space, so you don't want to fill up the and sections, right? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And you'll notice that I like to keep almost the space between the 3 and the 4 beat almost empty, right? Give that some space. And so this may be your level. This may be the level that you want to stay at and practice and impress people with and play that. But if this is too easy for you, then maybe you want to go on to stage 5, and I'll be back in a second with some stage 5 stuff. So now stage 6. This is where stage 5, the early intermediate, is good, but you want to push the envelope a little bit. So let's go ahead and make a stage 6. We're going to save a copy. We're going to call it stage 6. And then we're going to open stage 6. All right, so we'll start with stage 5, but this is really going to be stage 6. So we'll call this intermediate. And we'll just call it intermediate. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to make it a little more, it's still going to be blocky in the treble, but we're going to make it, we're going to change it to octaves. Octave melodies, call it octave melodies. No, let's call it triple octaves, because that's what they really are. Okay, good. And so we're going to add some harmony, and we're going to add octaves in here. And so we're kind of running, I like this bass line, so I'm going to keep this bass line for the rest of the stage 6, stage 7, stage 8. I don't have any issues with the bass line. I may fill in some notes in the bottom, but we need to beef this up. If we're going to really get to intermediate, we can't just have 2 notes, up here in the treble. So what we're going to do is we're going to start adding octaves. And so I don't like harmonies on the 4th beat. I just like to keep them clean. So we'll start by adding an octave, and we're going to go up. And then we're going to take that A and we're going to move it up. So I'm going to make sure I get the right kind of notes. So I want to take that, but I don't want that level F to be the melody note. I want this F to be the melody note. And so what I need to do is then make an F chord. So let's go ahead and fill in an F chord. And you're going to notice that this is going to start to sound, and take that out because we can't play that. Always keep an idea of what you can play as a player. Now, a player can play an octave with with the 3 notes. That's just an F chord, an F major chord. And so what we're going to do is, to get to intermediate, we want the treble to sound a little bit fuller. And so all we're going to do is keep adding octaves. So I'm going to go to my quarter note. Actually, sorry, that should be that. And so I want to go to this note, and I want to add notes, and I'm going to just add a bunch of notes here. So, and I'm going to go up an octave, and then I'll do all the 4th beats first. So let's do a G, let's do a D. I don't know why that's doing that. Oh, I know why. Because I'm supposed to be on quarter notes. All right, so G, and then a D, and then another F. Okay, so that takes care of the 4th beats. The 4th beats melodies are now in octaves. And now I want to go to the 1st beats, and that A I want to be up here. I want to add, since it's an F chord, I'm just going to add in my F chord. I'll come back and delete that in a minute. Again, the melody note's an F, so I want the F on top here, and I'll fill in the notes of the B flat, and I'll come back and delete that in a minute. And then C is the melody there, and so I'll fill in the A and the F of the F chord. Now I'll take it off note creation, and I will come here and I'll start deleting some notes. I wonder why. Okay. So now I'm going to have the melody notes on the top of the octave and the bottom of the octave. And so that's kind of fun. Now, you could get away with leaving off the bottom note if your hand isn't big enough to cover the full octave with the notes and it's not comfortable. You could take that note off, and that would be fine. But for intermediate, I think you should probably be able to play an octave note. So let's hear how that sounds. Again, that's the only changes I'm making, is adding the octave and adding some treble harmonies in there. And I should probably call it treble octaves with harmonies. With harmony. Okay. So let's hear how that sounds, just to see if we're on the right track for an intermediate. So let's go ahead and play. That something's wrong in there. I added the major 7th in there for some reason. So let's make that an F chord, and then go back and make sure that it sounds right. So you're gonna make all sorts of mistakes, but that's why you have this player up here to play it, and so you can hear how it sounds. So when I do make a mistake, like adding the E in there, some people may have liked it. Adds a little bit, adding the major 7th is interesting. When you're ending. Some people might add the 6th, but we will just play it straight for now. Let me go away for a second, and then I'll come back and I'll have this all filled out with octaves. So I have completed filling out the treble in octaves and with harmonies on the 1st beats. And right here, a couple things I want to point out to you. I've got the C7 here. I still left the G out because there are C, E, B flat, and C. C is the melody note, so I want that on the top and the bottom. And I just leave out, because you don't really want to play a 5-note chord in your right hand at this stage. And then I filled in, again, these octaves. And then down here, added... They were 3-note chords, now they're 4-note chords, and I raised them up so they're not down in this area, and I added another note in here, and I added the B flat here, so C, E, G, B flat, and then that leads to the F. I could put an A in here, but I didn't. And then C, and then a full octave chord up top. So let's hear how that sounds and see if, to your mind, your ear, it sounds like an intermediate level song. You know what we did. We didn't do too much from stage 5, but hear how it sounds to you. Great. So to me, that sounds like a very solid intermediate piano arrangement of Amazing Grace. As you can see, going from stage 1 to stage 6, not too hard, and it kind of makes sense. And hopefully that will be a challenge for you, or if that's not a challenge, if that's something you already do, then maybe you want to move on to stage 7. And stage 7 we'll talk more about in a second. Great. So we've gone from stage 1 to stage 6. It's starting to sound full, and that may be perfect for you, give you something to work on, play the song you want, but you may want a little bit more. And so what else can we do to get this to what I would call maybe a late intermediate, maybe an early advanced? So we're going to do the same thing we're going to do. We're going to save as, and we're going to call it stage 7. I'm going to save it, and then we will open it. And again, what can we do to make this a little bit less good? So now everybody can see it. So now I've got the stage 6, but now I want to turn this into stage 7 and call it late intermediate, maybe early advanced, but definitely late intermediate. And we'll call it fills. And fills was a great term in the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s. They used to have billions of books about fills and runs, and I'll put fills and chords. And so the idea was, when you have space, you fill it in. And so we talked about earlier about motion, and we got eighth notes in the bass to give us all the motion we need in Amazing Grace at 88 beats per minute. So now, where is the space? So you can see I've got dotted half notes here, dotted half notes. And so a late intermediate, maybe an early advanced pianist would fill in that space, needing a fill. And so let's go ahead and fill that in with the easiest possible thing we can think of. And the easiest possible thing is an echo. And the echo would be to echo this chord up octaves on the second beat and maybe the third beat. And so we just want to echo it up. And so to show you what I mean, we're first going to change this chord to a quarter note. So now we've got 2 more quarter notes. And these chords are actually going to be on the second beat and the third beat. And it's going to be easy because we're going to use the same exact chord. So our hands are going to be in the same spot. So let's go ahead and make another F chord, just 1 octave up. So that's an F chord, but 1 octave up. And then what we want to do is, because we want to fill in on the third, we want to do the same chord, but an octave even higher. And so how we do that is we do the same, because we don't want ledger lines up to the universe. We want to use an octave line, and so let's put in an octave line there, and we'll click on that octave line. Oh, undo. So I want to click off my note creation. I want to take the octave, and I want to make it back. So it's just this chord here. And right there. So let's click off that and see how that looks. Now, how do you read that? For those that might not know, that's an octave sign. It just means play the notes an octave higher. So this will be our melody, and the melodies will be on the 1, but then our fill chords will be higher. 1 octave higher first, and then 2 octaves higher than the melody. And so we will go ahead and do that for the first 4 measures. And we'll change that first to quarter notes. And then I will go ahead and the exact octave, right? So we'll start higher. And then we'll do the exact same chord. And just will put an octave sign. And then we'll click off note creation. And we'll do this because we don't want to play this an octave higher. This always stays where it is. And so we'll do the same thing here. This takes a little bit longer because there's so many more notes. But I will go ahead and do the same exact chord because we don't want to change hand structures or hand positions or harmonies. And then we'll do the same exact chord here, but we'll make this one an octave higher. And we'll come off note creation, and we will move that back so that the 4th beat isn't there. So as you can see in this first line, I'll do one more. We'll change that to a quarter note. We'll add this. Nope, that's a B. Let's take that off for a sec because I made a mistake. That would sound terrible to me. And I will go ahead and C, F, A, C. Do the same thing. And it's going to sound a bit like an octave. And then I'll put the 8th note in there, and then I will. So I just want to do that in front of you so you could see what I was doing. And now this looks like a mess, right? Because this looks like late intermediate, advanced. There's a lot of black. It would be hard to play all this stuff, hard to decipher and read it. But since you've created it, you know exactly what it is. We're just taking this one chord, we're moving it up 1 octave and then up a 2nd octave as kind of an echo feature. And we're doing it the same. So all you have to do is go through stage 6, learn how to make those chords easily, and then keep those chords up. Now this looks really challenging, but it fills in our space. It's a fill, and it's easy because we don't change hand positions. We just take our existing hand position and go up an octave. So let's hear how that beginning sounds, and if it sounds kind of late intermediate with all that extra notes in there. That sounds good to me. So that sounds late intermediate, early advanced. It's not, we didn't do too much to change it. All we did was we filled in these 2 beats with treble note stuff. So let me go back, cut away for a second. I'll fill in the rest of it and come back. All right, we're back with stage 7. I've taken a minute and filled in all of the chords. Again, the only thing we did was take the first beats and make them echo the same notes up an octave and then a 2nd octave. And so things to call out here, when I got to the C7, I really just made an 8 and a 15. A 15 is really basically 2 octaves up. So if you're looking at the music, it just looks like the same chord, but this 8 means this is an octave above this, and this 15 is 2 octaves above that. So I did that for that and that because I was getting high up. I didn't want to keep writing up 50 million ledger lines. And down here I wanted to be a little bit fuller, so I did the same thing here. I took the beat 1. You can see, if I go back to stage 6, you can see we just had a half note, and then 3 notes here, and then a single bass note. So because we're making it a lot fuller, it's late intermediate, maybe early advanced, want to make this a pretty impressive ending. And so added the extra bass note on the bottom of each of the single bass notes. Fill that out. I added the 4th, I added the octave in here for each of these fill chords on the bass clef. And then of course I echoed the same chord here, and then up here, and then of course the octave, up 1 octave, and then up 2 octaves to get it. So Hopefully that makes sense to you, and it looks terrifying, right? If you saw this in a book, on a sheet music book, you go, "Oh my God, that's crazy terrifying. I could never do it." At least how I would say. I always judge sheet music by the amount of black on the page. So if there's a lot of black on the page, I kind of shied away from it. But since you know how to do this and you know what it consists of, it really isn't that hard to do. And so let's go ahead and play this stage 7 late intermediate with the fills and the fill chords and the treble and just see how it sounds. Okay. Great. So it sounds really full at the end, and it's a nice full arrangement, and it's something that you could work on if you're not at that level. But if you're at that level, then maybe that's a great way to play the song. Maybe you play the song starting with stage 4, kind of simple, or stage 5 as the first refrain. Then you do the second refrain by adding the octaves into it, and the third time you play the song, you add these echo chords in there, and now you've got a 3-minute song with three versions of Amazing Grace that all sound progressively harder. So that's stage 7. That's the fill chords, and if you want to go to the last stage to make it really advanced, what I consider really advanced, we'll talk about stage 8 in a second. Great. So now we've done stage 1 through stage 7. We have taken a lead sheet, we've gone through beginner stages, intermediate stages. Now we want to get to an advanced stage. And to me, an advanced stage is where you want to be, where you ultimately want to be as a piano player. And to me, the advanced stage, and I have a confession to make. I am not an advanced player. I'm not advanced the way I would like to be advanced, which is one of the reasons I'm doing this project, was because I downloaded this software on Tuesday, and it's Friday today, and I wanted to be able to get from a lead sheet to an advanced, at least in a computer, so that I could have something to practice with. And so, to me, my influences for pop songs and how to make them sound advanced are Liberace, Michael Feinstein, Ferranti and Teicher. So my idea of an advanced piano arrangement is something that Liberace would have created. Now, Liberace could go through all of these stages, 1 through 8, probably without even writing them down, he just had it in his mind that he could do that. I can't do that, and so the process that I've created is to go through each stage, create the arrangement, and then get up to an advanced level. So let's go ahead and save our stage 7 as stage 8. Then we'll open it, and then we'll start seeing so in my opinion, how to make this out of a Liberace. How would Liberace arrange this last stage? And so let's go ahead and have some fun. Because we have a Liberace in a player, this electronic player can play anything I put down on this piece of paper. So let's go have some fun. So the first thing I want to do is, there's still some space. There's still quarter notes up here. And so, playing them the way we're playing them in stage 7, and let me make this stage 8 first, and we'll call this advanced. And Liberace was known for arpeggios and trills and ornaments, and I'll just call it arpeggios, fills, and ornaments. So how we want to do this is I still like the bass line, so I'm not going to change that, but I do have some space here between the quarter notes. And so the first thing I want to do is I want to make these rests so that I can, instead of just doing block chords as echoes, which is an easy way to do it, I want to start making it a little more challenging. So let's start doing arpeggios in the right hand. And so the easiest way to do an arpeggio is the chord that you just did. Just play that chord, but as an arpeggio. I always wait a half a beat before you start the arpeggio. And so let's go ahead and make this a quarter note. And then let's try a couple of different arpeggios. So let's do 16th note arpeggios. And we will we'll start on the same note. Right, and we'll go up maybe one or two higher. All right, so there we've got an arpeggio. So and we stop right there, and I'm going to change that to, let's take this off. Let's highlight that note, and let's make that so there we've got a pretty simple arpeggio. We're just taking the F chord, F, A, C, F, A, C, F. So I don't want to do an 8th note arpeggio because that would just mirror the bass. So it's going to be, if it's going to be an arpeggio, it's going to be a little faster than the bass. So let's see how that would sound. And that may be good enough for an advanced. And so I don't want it to end on an octave up. So let's try that. Let's see how that sounds. Okay, so not bad, but just a little slow. So what I want to do now is let's go to let's make some of these 8th notes. So now I want to do something interesting. And the interesting thing I want to do is I want to add a change in meter, not meter, but I want to make these triplets. And I want to see if we can make a triplet sound pretty cool. And let's do a triplet for each 8th note in the bass. So I'm going to put that there, and I'm going to use the triplet sign. Add a tuplet, I believe. Add a tuplet. Add a triplet. Now it's a control 3. So I'm going to add the tuplet there, and I am going to do 3 notes. And for the 3 notes I'm going to do are just the chord. Okay, so I've done 3 notes on that beat. I'm going to take that off. I'm going to do this as a control 3 and this one as a control 3. Whoops. I'll make that an 8th note and then make it a control 3. So now I've got tuplets, and so what I can do now is just do the chord up, and then I will do, it's a bit messy, so I'm sorry for that, but I'll get to it. All right, let me take that off. Let me clean up some mistakes here. Nope, that one. So let's do that and then make that an octave up. And then do that. So I've done it. Now I'll talk through what I did. So all I did was I wanted one tuplet, one triplet between each quarter note or each 8th note in the bass. And so the notes I chose were the same notes from the chord. In fact, my hand position makes the block chord, and then I start the chord going up. And because it's a 3-note chord, I could have a triplet and in between each, and then I could end on the melody note, which is the F. So let's hear how that sounds and see if that sounds a little more advanced. So I like that. I think that's great. So that's what I want to use, because to me that sounds like something Liberace might do. He might start it a little slower and then end up a lot faster, but typically he'd always end on the melody note at the very end on the 3rd beat. So he'd always start on the 1.5 beat, and then he'd always end up on the beat just before the melody. Just because it sounds, sometimes he uses two hands, etc. But I think for our purposes, having one arpeggio run with the right hand in the same beat as each triplet in one eighth note beat, I think that will sound good. Now the other thing I do is I don't want to put that in every measure because that would sound too weird. It would sound too much, right? So you don't want it in every measure. So the second measure I would keep as the block chords up fills, because that'll give you a little bit of space, because you want to give the listener a little bit of space, not only in the fourth beat but between these, because there's so much going on here that you want to leave some space in here. So what I'll do is I will change this one to the same thing and just have some fun with it. So we'll take the eighth out for now, and what I'll do is I will make this a quarter, an eighth note, and then I will make this an eighth, and then this will be still a quarter note. So that gives me the structure. It's really going to be eighth note, but now these are going to be tuplets, right? So I'm going to make Control 3, and then I want to make the note. Again, we are using the exact same notes of the chord, right? And I want to stop that. I want to highlight that, do my Control 3 to get a tuplet, and then I want to keep going with the chord, and B flat, D, and then one more set. I want to highlight this, and I want to Control 3 to add my tuplet, and then I want to use the same three notes here because I'm going to use the octave sign. Whoops. And I'm going to get off that. I'm going to move that up to the D, and then for this note, I want to end it on the melody note, which is also an F. So I want to have a quarter note, and I want to make that an F. Now I want to take off my note creation, go on to eighth notes, and I want to move this back to that note and back to there. So it looks challenging, looks really hard, but all it is this chord, and then you're doing a triplet on each of these eighth notes in the bass. So it sounds good, but it's not hard. It's actually pretty easy. So and then again, alternating, I would still keep this as block chords. So those would be the first four chords. So let's take a quick listen to how that sounds. Good. So I think that sounds very good. So what I'll do is I'll take a minute and I will alternate this kind of arpeggio on alternating measures. And then I'll come back and I'll explain any interesting things I find. So I've filled out the whole page for stage 8, the advanced, what I would think of as advanced. Have some arpeggios in there, some block chord fills that we had from stage 7. More arpeggios, the block chords, kind of alternating back and forth to give a little bit of space, so we don't want to overwhelm the listener. When I got to the C7, I wanted that to be a little bit different because it kind of is an interesting point to high point of the song. So I did a chord, I echoed the chord on this beat here. I put an arpeggio symbol here, which means to play it an arpeggiated chord. And then after the chord, 8 octaves up, or an octave up, starting on basically this note and this note are the same, which is the melody note. I did a 5-note kind of thing, right? So the whole chord as fast as I could to get to that beat where I end on the melody note. So the melody note is kind of driving everything. So I start on the melody note on this chord and then I finish, but I had a little turn in there, so that was kind of fun. And then I went back to the standard triplet arpeggios for that. I don't think I did anything interesting down here except I added an arpeggiated final chord. just to kind of drive it home. So it looks impossible if you were just picking this up and looking at it, but now that you know where it all comes from, it really isn't that hard. It's difficult, challenging to play and get right, but to arrange it, it was really not that tough at all. So let's go ahead and play it, and then you can hear what my version of advanced sounds like. Great, so that was stage 8. I'm happy with it. If I could play that, I would be very happy with myself. So I am going to practice and work towards that arrangement there. So I want to talk a little bit about practice in a second, so I'll be back in a second. So I want to say a few words about practicing this. So now you've downloaded the MuseScore 3 notation. You've picked a song that you wanted to play, something easy, hopefully. You've put it in a lead sheet form in stage 1. You've added a bass clef and the bass note for stage 2. Stage 3, you started adding some harmony to it, and so on and so forth, going through a beginner, intermediate, advanced stage. So you've done all the work on the computer, and you've heard how it sounds from the electronic player. So the question is, what do you do now? So then what I would recommend is I would take stage 1 and do all the stages. I would print it out, I would put it on the computer, or bring it, on your tablet over to the computer, over to the piano. And so I would put the printout on the piano for the lead sheet, and I would just play the lead sheet. And I would use a metronome, and I would start off slowly. So with the lead sheet in the beginning stages, I would knock maybe a quarter of the speed off. So I would, bring that down to 66 on the metronome. And then I would play that melody until I got it in my hands, in my head, in my ear. So then I would have no problem playing that. Once you can play it at, say, 66, then you move it up to 88, and you get to play it at 88, and you get good at 88, and then I would move it up one more time to 88, and 22 is what, 110? I would move the metronome up to 110, and I would be able to play it at 110. Once I could play the lead sheet at 1.5 or 1.25 times the regular speed, then I would print out stage 2. And then I would do the same thing at stage 2 at 66, 88, 110, maybe 132 if I wanted to challenge myself. And then get up there so that I could play it. It should be pretty easy. You should be able to get through this stage pretty quickly, as long as you can play it 3 times in a row perfectly. Then I would move up to stage 3 where you're adding some harmony. Same thing, 66 beats per minute, 88, then 110. Then I would start adding the motion for the easy piano. I would do this until I could play it 3 times at 66, 88, and 110. And then I would get to this level here, same thing, 66 beats per minute, 88. And then once I could play it perfectly, I would go on to stage 6, which is the octaves, and I would do that. 110 might start getting challenging, but that's fine. Do it the same process. Stage 7. So that's how I would practice all of these. And I'm going to do that, and that's how I recommend you do it, because that's how you get better at it. And you stop at the stage that you're comfortable at. Maybe stage 5, get a little bit of motion, sounds pretty good, and you'll be happy to play at parties. You finish that, you move on to your next song. You pick another song, you do this in MuseScore, and then you take the sheets over to the piano and you practice them that way with the metronome, very slowly at first. If you can't play it slowly, you can't play it fast. And I would do that until you got up as far as you wanted. And if you wanted to get to stage 8, I would probably slow that down to 44, put it in half, play it at half speed until I could actually play each note cleanly, and then start moving the metronome up to 66, maybe 88. You'll probably never be able to play it at 110, but maybe, add, go up to 96 or something. So that is how I would recommend practicing after you've done your own arrangement. So I hope this was helpful. I wish I had something like this when I was starting out, because I thought I could open a fake book on the piano and be able to immediately come up with a stage 5 or stage 6 arrangement without thinking about it. And I never could. I never could progress past, say, stage 2. Just didn't get it, didn't understand that you really have to do some work in arranging before you can get to something that sounds good. And with the MuseScore software now, it's pretty easy, and you could make pretty impressive sounding arrangements just by spending a little time doing it. And then once you think about it away from the piano, you print it out, and then you take your arrangement to the piano and you play it. And I hope this was helpful. If you found it helpful, hit the like button. Show me that you liked it. If you have any questions, I'm easily reachable at Picarzo.com. You can leave me a comment below. If you need a piano, obviously Picarzo Pianos is the best place to obtain a piano. But I wanted to do this because I thought this might be helpful to some beginner, intermediate piano players who don't want to be tied to buying arrangements of a song that they want to play. If they could find the lead sheet of the song that they could play, then they could spend a few minutes in MuseScore, create an arrangement for themselves at their level, and then play that, sound good, and move on to the next song, which is what we all want to do. We want to play the songs we like to play. We want to be able to play within our ability, and we want them to sound nice so that the people listening will enjoy them as well. So I hope this was helpful. Please let me know if it was. And until I decide to do another video, please let me know if you want to hear another video, another song arranging. I could do that as well. And I do arranging for students. So if you want me to do the arrangements for you, just reach out to me. However, I think you can do it yourself. So try doing it yourself. And if you want arranging lessons or something, you can reach out to me. But I think you can do it yourself and enjoy playing the piano. Thank you.